This is my presentation on the huevos rancheros, or the Serrano, specifically working on the Serrano pepper. So the Serrano pepper, it actually has its Mexican roots originating from the mountainous regions of Puebla and Hidalgo. So when Spanish explorers came over to Mexico, when they first came off, they studied a lot about the Aztec culture, which unbeknownst to them, they would end up erasing much of the Aztec culture, but for now, they were studying the Aztec culture for what they were eating, and they found a lot about what the kind of foods they had and what they were growing and cultivating, and they found that in Puebla and Hidalgo, that the Serrano pepper was very widely grown, and that it was used to mix up, just sort of spice up the dish and add an extra dense flavor to it. So with all the 64 different peppers that Mexico has and beholds, the Serrano and the jalapeno were the still dominating pepper. So regardless of the fact of how widespread peppers are in Mexico, the Serrano and jalapeno were the most widely used peppers just because of their unique taste profile and the depth of flavor that they added to the dishes that they were going to. So as time went on and as Tex-Mex grew a lot, they were highly exported to the United States to fulfill a lot of the dishes that Tex-Mex had offered. Because of that, we had a lot of Serrano peppers that were grown because they needed to be grown in warmer environments, being exported to the United States with its Mexican roots. But one thing that was interesting is that after studying how the peppers were being made and how they were being farmed, they needed to store them. And so they used the same practice that dates back to the Ottoman Empire, where you pickled peppers, using it to preserve, keeping it in a high salt environment to ward off different organisms and microbacteria, to be able to pickle peppers and make them taste actually a little better while also preserving the peppers. So the serrano pepper is a pepper, so it is a vegetable. So what this means is that usually it has a higher carbohydrates, higher protein, less fat, and a lot more fiber in its diet. So we see this here, that for 105 grams per serving, it only has 34 calories, which is actually very, very small. But for a vegetable, it's pretty moderate. Pretty around the world, you get the same idea with the same gram serving as broccoli and carrots and so on. So it doesn't have much fat. It has half a gram of fat for the 105 grams for the serving, only 7 grams of carbohydrates, and 1.8 grams of protein. But a lot of these carbohydrates aren't really digested. They're actually used as fiber. So it has a very high amount of fiber, as seen in other vegetable trends, with 3.9 grams out of its 7 grams of carbohydrates being just fiber. But one interesting thing about it is that serrano peppers have very high vitamin C, with 47.1 milligrams consisting of 52% of our daily value intake, and then vitamin B6 at 0.53 milligrams, which is at 41% of our daily value intake, making this a very nutritious and healthy vegetable. So capsaicin is a huge health benefit because it lowers overall body inflammation. So when you eat a lot more acidic foods, eat a lot more unhealthy junk with a lot more grease in it, the overall inflammation in your body rises because it doesn't have enough nutrients, and it is, on top of not having enough nutrients getting from your high-fat diet, it also has a lot of free radicals coming in from the processed food. So this rises your inflammation in your body, it attacks a lot of your joints, your eyesight becomes a lot worse, your thinking becomes a lot more cloudy because of the inflammation, just because of how your body attacks itself when it's in a high inflammation state. So one of these things that it can does is, because if it reduces inflammation, it reduces migraines, which is actually very helpful for people suffering from a large amount of migraines. Another thing is that when your body is in a high inflammation state, you have a lot more arthritis, joint pain, a lot more arthritis, joint issues, because you get a lot more inflammation in those joints. Now, one other thing that it does do is, because your body is in a high inflammation state, if you are considerably eating a lot of junk food, is that your heart ends up beating a lot harder, beating a lot faster. Your blood vessels get thicker because there's more inflammation out at your blood vessels where your blood is carrying those free radicals from the junk food. So what it does is capsaicin goes in and it increases good cholesterol and actually lowers heart disease and reduces that inflammation and creates those blood vessels to become a lot more relaxed and a lot less rigid, as it does when it gets to build up a plaque. And that's why capsaicin is hugely medically beneficial. So you always have to check for a serrano pepper's ripeness. Always check for that vivid deep green you get when you get it at the store. Make sure that it is still firm. Those are the biggest two things, as long as it's green, as long as it's firm. If it's soft to the touch, it's probably gone bad, it's probably overripe, and it's not going to get the taste that you want. If it has intensive discoloration as bruising or as any color other than green, do not pick that pepper. That pepper is not good for you, and it will not be the kind of pepper that you want to eat. So it's agriculture. So it's seasonality. It's planted right after the last hard frost. So as soon as spring comes in, that you are sure that spring has come in, that's when it's the time to start to grow, right before it gets way too hot. But it's still in that same environment where at nighttime it only reaches 60 to 70 degrees, which is why the Puebla and Hidalgo mountains were perfect for cultivating this crop back in the Aztecs, and why it's still amid the major areas to farm the Serrano pepper today. It only takes 80 days to grow, which means that it's a pretty hefty, takes a lot of time for the peppers to grow, but it's not too, I wouldn't say that it's too sensitive to the temperature changes around it. So you still yield a great pepper regardless of how you do it, as long as you're in that warm, humid environment the whole time. So it has a really good standability because although it takes 80 days to grow, it has great cultivation when it grows. And as long as you keep in that warm, humid environment, it's not too extreme and unsensitive enough where the crop will fail if it gets too cold one night. But overall, as the temperature average is at 75 to 65, it will then grow and yield a very nice crop. So this is something that I have always wanted to try, but I've never been able to do it. And so I actually got this recipe from my dad, who wanted me to try this out about 2 weeks ago. He said, hey, try this out, send it over. I just finished making this up, and I want you to be able to try it. I was like, all right, sounds good. And it's actually just in time because it's a new dish my father made, and it has vegetables that can be used. So what you do, and this is how he did it, and this is how he demonstrated it to me, is you chop 1 serrano pepper, 1 onion, 1 bell pepper, and then 1 potato. What you have to do after is you have to place the potato on the buttered pan and roast until brown. So you let the potatoes on, they're nice and diced. You put them on there until they're nice and crispy and a little bit crunchy to be able to really taste it. So as soon as the potatoes are brown, and this takes around 20 to 30 minutes, you add the other vegetables. And then you wait until they're pretty nice and pretty soft as they've cooked. And then you add the eggs. And then after you have added the eggs, you cook until they are firm. So now what you always have to remember is to make sure that the stove is on medium-high heat the whole time from start to finish. And that's it. So for this one, I actually made my own modifications to it. If it's a first dish, might as well make your own spin on it. And so what I did is I added a blueberry bagel that I had around, and then I added a little bit of sliced bacon on top of it, and it actually tasted very good. So I know this is it's a little bit odd. It's not a traditional dish as really wanted though, but I wanted to have the huevos rancheros and be able to cook those to taste really well on top of adding my own spin to it. So this dish, the eggs themselves, and what I'm going to focus on because it's meant to be a traditional dish, the eggs themselves were actually very good. Having the serrano pepper and the onion and the bell pepper together really combined together, and it tasted actually very enjoyable with a hint of onion in the back of the eggs, while also having that texture with the potatoes and the peppers. So there was a little kick to it, which I really liked, and I kind of wish I put a little bit of salsa on it, but that's okay. But tying it all together, having the bacon and the bagel on it really brought it closer to the culture I have here in the United States with a lot of that consumerism that they have around. And I actually really enjoyed it together because it brought a sweet sense to that bacon. And so what a unique cultural way that people eat the food is they usually eat it naked without bagel or bacon. They usually have it on side. Usually they have so much eggs on it that their plate is full whenever they have the chance to. And usually that's just the eggs, huevos rancheros, that's the whole thing. There's not really much to go else on it. That's to be a dish that's all on its own. I just decided to take an extra step further and add it onto a bagel to make it taste a little good. So actually, I really enjoyed the taste of the dish. I really liked how they use serrano peppers and onions into the dish to make it taste very well. And I believe there are other ways to season it in other unique cultural ways as such, where people actually put salsa on it, like I said before. They cook a lot more peppers. They add some chorizo in it, which is actually a very good Mexican sausage that I enjoy. And yeah, so there are many other ways to enhance the huevos rancheros, but that's how I ate mine.
So this is not how it's traditionally presented. Usually with the tortilla underneath it and with the eggs on top, with salsa over on top of it with a little bit of mix. You can either do salsa or pico de gallo along with the seasoned eggs. But I chose to do it this way. And it's not the traditional way to eat it. I know and I understand, but at the moment in time, I was very hungry to do it, and it looked very appetizing. And honestly, it tasted really well. So I have no regrets over doing this. It tasted amazing. It was really well, and I was still able to get that traditional Mexican dish with the huevos rancheros.
So Serrano peppers is more. This becomes more of a comparison on peppers as a whole, specifically to the Serrano pepper. Serrano peppers, in regards to other peppers, have a lot of influence in the United States due to the huge Tex-Mex upbringing in the 1800s and 1900s when there were still Mexican ranch workers working in Texas after Texas became independent, and they wanted to be able to express their own culture and their own cuisine when they were largely discriminated by the Texan Tejanos population. So when they were able to influence that, that actually influenced a lot of the U.S. culture with peppers and how it shifted over to having a little more spicy diet, especially in the southern area closer to Mexico, which they just really enjoy. So this trend of the more southern a country gets, the more they use hot peppers actually goes all the way to Europe, where southern Italy and then this Balkan countries actually utilize peppers a lot more. So Serrano peppers are widely exported to southern Italy and the Balkan countries because of how their geographical location allows them to eat more of this cuisine. It allows them to incorporate them more in their diet. And so actually, I would reference this because I looked up how Russia didn't have as much peppers and serrano peppers in their diet because they were a lot more northern. And so the same thing applies to the United Kingdom, the Finnish countries, Norway, Finland, that area, and especially stuff like northern Spain, France, Germany, those kind of issues, they don't really use as much spicy foods, which I was very surprised about. But another thing that actually uses serrano peppers a lot is southern China loves to eat serrano peppers. And one thing I did note that is not in this slide is that Australia actually rarely ever use peppers. Less than 10% of the population eat peppers and serrano peppers as a whole. So this is huge culturally because you recognize how geographic really plays a huge role in how these crops are utilized and cultivated. And so although serrano peppers can be shipped now anywhere in the world, that doesn't change how they are used in a diet, because ultimately people who live closer to the heat enjoy hotter foods than people who live closer to the north, which they enjoy more milder foods.
So here are all my references. So there was ones where I didn't have the date of the author, so I had to write no author and no date because they were more general information, but I still wanted to have all the APA cited. And yeah, here's all the references coming from, all the URLs. If you have any more questions, please reach out. And thank you.